Hello, this is Coach McCarthy. We are finishing our unit on retirement. So, in one, we talked about the IRA, the individual retirement account. The IRA has a lower number that you contribute, so $6,000 for those under age 50 in 2021. And then we also talked about the 401. 401 is better because you can put more money into it. Okay, 401 is also matched by your employer. We talked about vested when you can get to 100% ownership of it, which is a really good scenario. And we also talked about the difference between a regular or traditional IRA and traditional 401k, and then the Roth. So, again, with traditional tax deduction for the year in which the contribution was made, you make contributions with pre tax income, so you don't pay tax on any money you put into the account. So, you're going to pay tax later. Whereas with a Roth, you're paying tax on it today. All right. And that's really the main difference between a Roth and a traditional. We talked about discussing the nature of retirement planning, what that looks like, trying to figure out how long you're going to live, your risk tolerance, your taxes, your budget, and all those kind of things. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the nature of estate planning. So, what's going to happen after you are no longer? So this is a link to NerdWallet, and we're going to talk about several of these things throughout this article. Whatever we don't cover, we'll definitely come back and touch base on. So, estate planning right here is the process of designating who will receive your assets and handle your responsibilities after your death or incapacitation. Okay, one goal is to ensure beneficiaries receive assets in a way that minimizes estate tax, gift tax, income tax, and other taxes. So that's the thing we really want to be careful about is you don't want to leave someone something and they have to pay a whole bunch of taxes on it. And that does happen from time to time. So we'll look through NerdWallet and see what they say. So 7 steps to basic estate planning. Number 1, inventory your stuff. Definitely. You got to know what you're going to do with everything in your estate, who it's going to go to. We'll talk about that, but you got to know what you have first. So homes, lands, cars, collectibles, personal possessions, your financial accounts, 401k, all of that stuff. You have to figure out where it's going to go. There is a situation where if you don't tell someplace for it to go, it's just going to go into your trust and it can get taxed a little bit harder. So you got to be careful with that. So working through number 2, account for your family's needs. Do you have enough life insurance? All right, we'll talk about that. Guarding for your children and backup guardian just in case. You do have to declare who's going to take care of your children should something happen to you and your spouse if you pass. Your wishes for the children's care, what's going to happen to them, how they're going to be, raised, what's going to go on. Establish your directives. A trust might be appropriate. Living trust, you can designate portions of your estate to go towards certain things when you're alive and who it goes to when you're dead. The medical care directive, the living will, spells out your wishes for medical care if you become unable to make those decisions yourself. So this is probably the biggest one that a lot of people are going to get done with is the medical care. So what's going to happen to you when you can't make decisions for yourself? All right, so medical care directive, financial power of attorney allows someone else to manage your financial affairs if you're medically unable to do so. So that's a big one. The power of attorney can be useful if the idea of turning over everything to someone else concerns you. Legal document does just what it says, imposes limits on the powers of your named representative. And be careful who you give power of attorney to because they are in charge of everything. Right? They can drain all your accounts because they have the right to do that. Okay, so just be very careful with that. Review your beneficiaries, so who's going to get your money, where it's going to go to, and not just your money, but where your stuff is going. All right, your life insurance policy, who's the beneficiary on that, make sure that those are all correctly set up. Know your state's estate tax laws. We talked about this earlier. We talked about that some states have different laws about inheritance and estates and how that breaks down. So you got to know what's going on. Every state's going to be a little bit different, but know your state's rules. Professional help is probably always going to be a good thing. A lot of these documents are going to need to be signed and notarized. Might want to have a lawyer take a look at them. So you want people that understand that process and what's going on and know about it. You also want people that know about how the IRS and the state works as far as how they're going to tax things. Sorry, hit the wrong button. So you want to know how your state is going to tax your account. Okay, what's going to happen with your accounts once you do unfortunately pass away. And then take a look at it. All right, you might set it at 40, but things change at 50. All right, so always be ready to reassess what's going on and how things are going. Okay, so coming back to our document, we talk about a will. Okay, and that's probably one of the biggest ones that people know about. This document spells out who should get your assets after your death. So you want to know where it's going. All right, be clear about who gets your assets. You can decide who gets what and how much. You can identify who should care for your children. Without a will, the courts will decide. So, and that's kind of the big thing to take away from all this. If you don't make a decision, the state makes the decision and the courts make the decision for you. It does not default automatically to anybody. All right, it defaults back to the state. And it's not always a good situation if you have the state taking care of your stuff. All right. So know what's going on, know where your stuff is going. So different kind of wills. All right. An executor slash successor. The executor successor is typically the person that's going to see that your will is done properly. Personal representative is the person responsible for overseeing the estate, paying any debts or taxes on behalf of the estate, care about that either, and making sure inheritors receive their inheritance. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have someone that you trust as your executor. It's probably good to have a successor, another one. Okay, just in case the first one can't do it for whatever reason. All right. Healthcare surrogate and medical power of attorney. We talked about those a little bit earlier. Healthcare surrogate is an adult who is appointed to make healthcare decisions for you when you become unable to make them for yourself. This is something that as you get older, and you'll see this maybe with your grandparents or something, that they might have this. Okay, someone that's going to make decisions for them if they can't, or if they're in a situation where they can't make those decisions anymore. Some of those decisions are whether someone wants to be on life support. You know, that's a big aspect of the part of your living will, and your surrogate can do that. Um, and they have the medical power of attorney to be able to, for lack of better terms, unplug you from that machine. We talked about living will advance healthcare directive. This is more along the lines of, do you want to be put on life support? Okay, the surrogate will make those decisions for you. All right, if you don't have those already, and the living will. Oh, this is so you can make one. A legal document that outlines your preferences in regard to what life-saving measures medical staff and first responders are allowed to perform on you to save or prolong your life. All right, so this is whether you want to be put on life support and do you want to live in a vegetative state. Okay, if you are only living on life support, do you want to stay that way? This is something you would do ahead of time. Power of attorney we talked about for someone to make decisions for you. And the last thing is just going to be your final arrangements. Okay, what do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be turned into a tree? Do you want to be set out to sea in your pirate ship and set aflames? So, understanding all those different things, some of this is not always easy to talk about. As you get older, it might be a little bit harder to talk about, but trying to figure out those things. Most of you guys are young, so hopefully you don't have to worry about any of these anytime soon. But it is something that you have to think about one day. What do you want to do with your remains when you are no longer of the living? Do you want to be hooked up to a machine if that's the only way you're going to stay alive? Who's going to be in charge of your estate? Do you have an estate? What are you going to do with your estate? Who are you going to leave what to? So those are all things that we see when we talk about planning for your estate. And have a good day.